We're joined by Father Jenkins, the president of the University of Notre Dame, and he will make the other introductions.
Okay. Thanks for being here, everyone. As you know, the Commission on College Basketball, an independent commission chaired by Secretary Condoleezza Rice, made public its report today. I think some of the key concepts are intended to preserve the collegiate model. Young people pursuing a degree, playing a sport on college campuses, and that's really what we wanted to preserve. There are a number of substantive recommendations. You've read it. I won't comment on all of them now, but I will say I learned a lot about the college basketball scene from Coach Mike Bray, who understood it on the ground far better than I did, and I was really appreciative of our conversations. It just helped me to understand the landscape and helped me to contribute to this commission. I will say, I think one of the reasons I had the privilege of being on such a distinguished group is the respect that Mike and the Notre Dame basketball program have in the college basketball world. They really live up to the ideals of college basketball, and we're privileged to have him here at Notre Dame, and as I say, he was a great source of information and enlightenment for me. So, and I will say he's incoming head of the National Association of Basketball Coaches, as indication of the respect with which he's held. So it's great to be here with Mike. He's going to answer the hard questions. I'll take the softball. So I don't know if you want to say anything.
Yes. Thank you, Father. First of all, I want to thank Father John, for 6 months of a commitment to try and help us out of the woods in college basketball. I mentioned to him when I talked to him in San Antonio, one of their meetings, I said, I really want to get this over with so you can get back to running the university and not worry about college basketball. It was very time consuming. We spent a lot of time together talking about it, but I certainly appreciate him being part of it and really appreciate what the commission has done, because my theme a little bit is we have to start somewhere with this, and I thought today was a very powerful and positive day for us.
We'll open it up for questions.
I have one for you, Father. It's not a hard one. How did you wind up on the commission? Like, just the process of, okay, this is something I want to do.
Oh, you mean how did I wind up saying yes? Or
Right.
Yeah, look, I care a great deal about college athletics. I think it's extremely important for our universities. Certainly it's important for young people who play the sports. It gives them an access to a place like Notre Dame and a college degree. But for our campus, it just is, it brings us together in a way, and it enlivens the spirit of the university. So I think but if it's tarnished, if the news is bad, then it's really in danger. So if I could contribute to making college athletics, and particularly basketball, what it should be, I was happy to give my time. It was worth giving my time.
At what point in the sport did you see it going sideways to where you thought, okay, somebody's got to do something about this because it can't continue the way it's continuing?
Well, I think the first FBI sting was some indication. Yeah, I think that, I have heard, I will say, I've heard, and Mike knows better than I, that this sort of thing was going on under the table, and this payment of players to go to a certain school. I didn't know if it was true or not, but this brought it into the light of day, and that's a real crisis. It's a real crisis, and so it needed to be addressed, and I was happy to do what I could to help.
Your statement earlier today mentioned the one-and-done situation. How serious is that in the game?
Well, look, it just kind of, it undermines, it sort of gives mockery to the very idea that these kids are coming here to get a degree, because in that case, the players, their families, the coaches, the universities involved all know they're not. They're just coming for a few months before they go on to the NBA, and that just shouldn't be the business we're in, and we shouldn't handcuff those kids and make them come if they don't want to be on a college campus and pursue a degree. So I just think it was more, there's such high-profile players. It was symbolic. It was said, it was a way of saying, look, you're not serious about this this collegiate model. And we had to say, yes, we are, and let's make the changes we need to make to show we're serious about it.
When the FBI first got involved in the fall, the solution or the quote answer is always, well, now you have to pay the players.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any scenario you can see in the future where college athletes are paid to play?
Look, I think when you're talking about payment for playing, I think once we go down that road, we become a second or third tier professional league. And I don't see an end to that. And I don't want Mike and I don't want the University of Notre Dame bidding on a player, out trying to outbid, Duke or Michigan or whatever for a player. I just think that changes the whole dynamic of where we're going. Now, I will say, we struggle, the commission struggled with name, image, and likeness. So should a player be able to realize some gains simply from their name? And I think we would have been open to that. The challenge is that in California there's a case, and the judge made very clear, you start down that road and there's no end to that. You'll be bidding for players. And maybe that settled law, maybe that will be settled law, maybe it won't, but at this stage we felt it wasn't the time to make that change while that court case was in the midst of litigation. So we didn't go there, but I do make a distinction between that discussion and a player getting a salary to play basketball for Notre Dame or any other school.
For Mike, Coach, what is your opinion on the pay for play? I mean, you're around student athletes. Maybe your perspective is a little bit different on that.
No, I'm in agreement with that. I think that cuts against everything, we're about, especially specifically here at Notre Dame. But these guys are doing pretty good. We put in cost of attendance, and that has helped them. One of the things that's never mentioned anymore, when I was a college player, you didn't go to summer school. You went home and got a summer job, and you made some money and you played in the summer league. Our guys are now on campus taking courses, which is huge as far as degree pursuit, but they also are able to make some money in the summer. They work my camps in the summer. So, they're doing well. And, the likeness situation, as Father talked about, that's going to be a tricky one. Down the road, I could see that happening, but because of litigation right now, it won't. So I'm, you ask any of our current guys, yeah, that'd be great. Let's get paid. Well, what are you worth? What are you worth if you're not an NBA prospect? What am I supposed to pay you? So I'm just glad. I think the commission didn't even touch that because it's just not. I think that's an easy crutch for everyone to throw out right now. We just should pay them. That makes you think trying to get a hold of college basketball as we're trying to. You think it's tough now. We throw that one in there, it's going to be out of control.
What are your thoughts on the NCAA or whoever organizing, gatherings where you can evaluate players as opposed to the whole AAU process?
Love it. To have another option where we can do that. This was thrown out 15, 20 years ago, and we didn't have the wherewithal, the money, or the support or organization to do it. It'll happen. To have regional combines that the NBA, USA Basketball, the NABC is involved in, where we can go evaluate in other situations, I think that's very positive, and I think that will happen.
The commission is just, they're making a suggestion here. Where do we go from here?
Well, here's where we go now. Their work is done. They have done an unbelievable job. And as I said, I want to get Father back to the business of running Notre Dame. He has been plugged into college basketball for 6 months, and we thank him for that, no question about it. Now comes the work for the NABC, the NCAA, and other groups, because they'll be give and take to shape these recommendations and present them in August, where they'll be voted on, and they will be fast-tracked through to be legislation. Some will go through right away. Others will have to be phased in. One of the things that I know coaches are very pleased about, and Father John and I spent a lot of time talking, they listened to the NABC, which represents the voice of the coaches, on things that we thought were key. And many of those things show up in the report. We will now have to be a voice even more so through the summer to get some shape to some of these suggestions.
This is for Father Jenkins. What you mentioned that you learned a lot through this process. What exactly did you learn, and did anything surprise you?
Well, you know, what is the truth, and Mike can attest this, is that we've come to a point where kids who are really talented basketball players and 14 years old, 15 years old, they're showered with attention and sometimes with material goods and sometimes with money under the table. And it's a different environment. Mike and I were talking that there was a day when he'd deal with the high school coaches, and the high school coaches sort of controlled the environment. They were educators. They cared about the educational progress of these kids. Now you've got a whole non-scholastic system coming in. You have apparel companies, and it's a pretty Wild West environment. We use the metaphor in the commission because the Secretary Rice was part of it. It's Afghanistan in many ways. It's ungoverned territory, and whenever you have ungoverned territory, you have bad actors coming in trying to capitalize on it. So I don't think I knew that, and Mike kind of let me know what it's about. And John Thompson's and Mike Montgomery are two coaches on our commission. So it's a different world, and we can't be nostalgic and pretend that we can go back to a previous time. We can't. But what we have to do is put in the regulation to prevent the bad actors from exploiting the situation and really to help these kids. I mean, really, they get benefits, but they can be exploited as well by people who have an interest in gaining from them. So let's put in regulations that will help them enjoy the game, learn the game, grow as people, but not be exploited.
And also, what exactly was your role on the commission?
I'd weigh in. It was actually, I will say this, I'm really impressed with Secretary Rice, the way she moved us forward. These are complex issues, and we had coaches, and we had ADs, and we had government people and presidents like me, and so different perspectives, but she was able to listen to everybody on each particular perspective, and I'll tell you, I mean, my perspective as a president was different from John Thompson's perspective as a coach, was different from David Robinson's and Grant Hill's perspective as players and NBA players, and so, but that's good, because we got to see the whole thing and just talk through these issues, and I was really impressed the way at the end of the day we were able to reach agreement on what would actually help the situation. So I weighed in. I gave my opinion in those conversations.
And this question is for both of you. Just what is your reaction to just the media reaction after seeing the recommendations released today?
Well, I'll say something briefly, and Mike can say. I think there's a narrative out there. And Mike referred to it. You got to pay the players, and you know, we'll hear that. I agree with Mike. I just think we'll undermine the thing we have. But that was probably unsurprising. I think it's first reactions. There were a lot of positive reactions. We don't have a silver bullet. We have to take steps one at a time, as Mike said. What's the next step? What can we do to improve the situation? And obviously there are going to be critics, not enough, not bold enough, but I think it was solid, and I think most in the media recognize that, but I'll let Mike talk.
Yeah. No, I told Father John earlier, I think the cynicism in some of the media is very disappointing. I mean, it really is. And it's weak and it's easy to go down that road. We have to start somewhere in this game. And today was a huge day, and the work that this commission did was fabulous for us to get started. We don't have all the answers. It's not going to happen overnight, but we've got the process started. And I think all the stakeholders now are on the same page and understand we got to work together on this thing. I know one of the things, Father John and Jeff Hathaway and John Thompson, after the first couple meetings, I saw both of them, and they both said, "Hey, your guy is good in those meetings," meeting Father John. And I know one thing he really pounded the table on is enforcement. And I know he was big on that, and I think that's one of the most powerful things that come out of this, that enforcement is taken away from the NCAA, and it's an outside entity that has an iron fist to really put it on some people. We need to have that, and to deter some of the living on the edge that some coaches have felt it's okay to do.
Mike, we've seen, you mentioned with the one and dones, there's been the baseball model proposed that to stay at least in college for 3 years or so. But that genie has been out of the bottle for a while, and it's not necessarily NCAA driven, it's NBA kind of classification. Do you see where there would be an elimination of that, where players just don't major in eligibility for a semester before moving on?
Well, I mean, I really believe in 2020, the one and done will be gone, you know, and kids will be able to go from high school right in. There's no question that the commission did a great job. First group they brought in were the NBA. That was the first group they brought in. I firmly believe Adam Silver and the Players Association feel it's time and want to help. You know, we have been an unbelievable farm system. They've had it good with us. The NBA has had it good with us. They need to help us a little bit now, and I really believe they feel it's time. Now, if they come to us, we're not going to have the baseball rule. I don't see that happening, and I don't see 2 years commitment. So a guy could still go after 1 year, but that phenom group, whether it's 7, 10, 18, go ahead and do it. If you don't get drafted, I like the idea that you can come back. Even with kids, say I have a young man 2 year, TJ Gibbs, a year from now, puts his name in, goes all the way, he's not drafted, they could come back. The other important aspect of today's report was agents being able to be involved and being able to communicate with high school kids. That is one of the other areas that's been hard to handle. The agents getting involved with great prospects at age 14. You know, I think one of our coaches said they're recruited before we recruit them, a lot of them. And so enforcement and the agents as advisors, as we have in baseball, as we have in hockey, I think this is good new territory for us to work on.
One of the things we've seen lately is some of the high school prospects decide to go to the G League in the NBA and maybe go a couple of years there. They're not going to make a lot, but it kind of eliminates the charade of going to college. Do you foresee something like that developing?
I think the G League situation, the money is going to improve. And I think that's a great option. Some guys just don't want to go to college. They want to practice their craft at age 18, right after high school. And I think that's fabulous. You know, so, and again, the G League will be attractive because the money will improve. I think each team, NBA team, is going to have its old farm team. You've got the two-way contracts. VJ Beecham was on one this year. So I think that's a great option. Instead of faking it and going to college, because you really don't want to be there, you do have that option to earn. And to earn, it's not over-the-top money like the NBA, but it's good money.
Why do you think by 2020 there will be?
Because I think that's when the NBA player, that's when the contract's up, and that's what the NBA is talking about. Just from talking to their people, it'll be that's the earliest they feel they would be in position to banish the one and done, and that high school kids could go right away.
Would you feel that would be an enhancement to a school like Notre Dame, which goes by the 4-5-year plan?
Well, you know, I think it's interesting because those people that recruit one and dones are now going to be recruiting the same pool we recruit. So maybe it'll be more competitive in our recruiting. For example, the 5 young men that we signed this year, a heck of a class. If the one and done rule was in, a couple of those institutions wouldn't have much of a recruiting class. Those guys would be gone. We'd probably be banging heads with them, you know, so it makes me think about our recruiting when that changes.
Thank you.
This is for you, Mike, and for you, Father John. You've mentioned enforcement, and that's kind of at the heart of this. It's not like suddenly today cheating was banned. I mean, people have found out ways to get around the rules. I'm sure they will continue to try and find ways. So how do you hold this up? How do you make this work?
I think they weren't stringent enough. The NCAA was handcuffed as far as, you know, probably investigation and then penalizing. So I think it was very tempting for some to really push the issue because the reward was definitely worth the risk. I think with enforcement moving outside and the penalties being harsher, it's not going to be finally. And so you're going to really have to think twice if you're going to go down that road. Again, I think I'm sure we'll catch some people, right? And they'll get hammered. I'm hoping it's a deterrent, for people to say, hey, I'm not even going to go down that road as I'm running my program because it's just too costly.
And I just say a couple things. I mean, I think, I'm not a lawyer, so I'm not going to go elaborate, but the talk was to put it in the contract of coaches and agreement of schools with the NCAA. Look, if there's an investigation, you cooperate, and if you don't cooperate, there will be penalties. Because, what the FBI can do and the NCAA cannot do, they can't do wiretaps, they can't do subpoenas, but I think we can find some ways in which schools will have a strong incentive to cooperate. So that's part of it. I will say, I think, and I don't want to go long on this, but I do think some of the recent decisions by the adjudication of the NCAA have gotten people scratching their heads, and it just creates cynicism if you don't have decisions that seem consistent, that seem appropriate to the violation, and so I hope we can address that.
You mentioned the FBI investigation, which kind of prompted all of this, and some people have been caught, but there's kind of an assumption that there's a lot more going on that will be revealed at a later date. Is it your expectation that the recommendations you guys put in place today will be used when, penalizing those people for past atrocities?
Well, it's certainly, I don't know the legislative process of the NCAA and whether it has a retroactive component, so I can't comment on that. I hope perhaps at some point the adjudicative, a new set of judges that kind of are really professionals that are paid, perhaps will help with some of these judgments. So maybe yes, maybe no, depends on the situation.
Mike, your thoughts on a 5-year postseason ban? I mean, how severe do you feel that is?
Bring it. I love it. Yeah. No, I think we have to be aggressive with it. I thought, that's the one thing I popped up in my seat when Condoleezza Rice, Secretary Rice, mentioned maybe lifetime bans, 5-year financial, the money from the tournament. I think if we're going to do it right, now we have to be really aggressive with it. So the commission kind of threw it into the NCAA's lap, the NABC's, as we try and shape this for real strong recommendations in August. I have a feeling it's going to be strong, and it has to be strong.
I know you like it because you guys have always contended that you've been diligent about doing things by the book. How much does this level the playing field for you guys?
Yeah, I think it does. I mean, I don't want to sit there here and be holier than thou. I mean, we've been very confident in how we've run it, and I think a lot of college programs run it like ours and do it the right way. But there's been a few that have pushed it. And then when you see them sometimes advancing in the NCAA tournament, that's a little bit hard to swallow. So, I think it will level it a little bit, and I think coaches as a whole are going to be very pleased with harsher penalties.
I'll just say, one of the things Mike has said, and I think it's true, is I think many of the coaches are saying, save us from ourselves. That coaches, they have high-profile jobs, they get compensated, but they're one bad season away from getting dumped. And so there's an incentive to push the edge. And I think if we have a set of sanctions and punishments, and frankly, presidents need to take responsibility, and ADs need to take responsibility, then everybody's on the same page, and a coach won't be tempted to kind of just cross that line that's going to get the program into trouble. So I hope that's a result of this.
Mike, the notion of banning a coach for life, do you concur with that?
I wouldn't have any problem with that if it's really severe. I really wouldn't. If we're going to put some teeth into this thing, I think we have to be really, really powerful with it. If it's a severe level 1, I think that's something that should be considered.
Particularly repeated. I mean,
Yeah, a repeat.
That's the problem. Somebody will go to a new place and they will do the same thing they did.
Father John, after having heard all the different perspectives, your confidence level today, as opposed to maybe in the fall, that college basketball can be fixed, it can get better?
It's a steep hill to climb. Let's not declare victory. And the NCAA has a lot of we all have a lot of responsibility. It's a steep hill to climb, but I think we're better off today than we were yesterday. I think it will require a commitment. So I wouldn't place odds on it, but I think there's as someone once said, I've quoted, "Never waste a good crisis." And I think this is a crisis, and we can use it to make college basketball better. It's a wonderful game, and I do think I love the pro game, but I think it's a different game in college, and it's young kids, people on campus colleges playing a game. It's a great thing. It's worth saving, but it will depend on all of us, on the NCAA, and we're the NCAA, to get it done. So I'm optimistic, but we've got a long way to go.
Thanks, guys.